My name is Katie Whiteman, and I'm here to share a few tips about using BigBlueButton for language instruction. So what we're going to do today is a sample class that I have set up on EduLINC, and I'm going to join my session now. We're going to see a few students join this class, and I'll talk you through a few different language learning activities that you can do with your students at a variety of different levels. So I'm just waiting for my session to join. And here we go. In this kind of COVID-19 crisis time, everyone's internet connection is at a premium, I'm sure. So when you first join BigBlueButton, you'll see an option for how you'd like to join the audio. Click your microphone and make sure that it has access to your microphone. And then you will be asked to do an echo test. Okay, I heard the echo. I'm going to click yes.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
All right. So I have joined my BigBlueButton conference area, and now I want to upload a presentation. So I'm going to go to where I have it saved. You can also pre-program your documents to go in your presentation. But mine did not work. So I'm uploading my presentation, and we can see that it's converting the file. And I just wanted to point out that a PDF file is your best bet. Okay, we're back. And I see I have 4 students so far already in my language class. They're all on time. This is great. Good afternoon, students. If you have your microphone enabled, give me a quick hello and say your first name, just so I know that your microphone is working.
Hello, I'm Sue.
Sue's there. Great. Who else is here? Just your first name.
Hi, Katie. I'm Will.
Hi, Will.
Hi, this is Katie Gibb.
Hey, Katie. We have 2 Katies in the room. This is great. So I can see that Will and Katie and Sue have all muted their microphone, which is great. And that my microphone is still working. I have that kind of pulsing around my microphone button. So it knows that I'm speaking and I'm the main presenter. As the moderator, you will have a few options that your students cannot see. So I've given my students an initial question to answer. And this is a great thing to do if you have stragglers coming into your room, if you have people starting at different areas. Hi, Anna. Your microphone's working. That's great. Thank you. Your intro chat question can be about the lesson content that you prepared beforehand. It can be a social question about, I don't know, a favorite film, or as with my teacher friends today, about their teaching experience. So I have my students answering that intro question in the chat box. So they're engaged right away. And while they're doing that, I can be checking to make sure that their microphones work, that they hear me, etc. I can also choose this time to share my webcam. So I'm going to allow that and start sharing. And we'll talk more about webcam considerations in a moment. But sometimes I like to share my webcam at the very beginning of my lesson, just to wave and say hello. My students can see my face. I'm doing okay. We're all in this self-isolation time, and it's weird, and it's really nice to have that kind of visual connection with your students. But it also eats into your internet connection. So I'm going to stop sharing my webcam right now. I live in a rural area, and I only have so much bandwidth. So for my students, they're typing their answers to those questions. I can be reading what they're answering. If I have follow-up or feedback to give them, I can be chatting with them and they could continue typing. This also gives me a moment to wait if I have some students that are late or have a connectivity issue. And I can see that multiple users are typing. Because my presentation is already here, students also have a chance to interact with what the content is going to be today. So include your agenda for your lesson on your first slide and use this opportunity when you're making your PowerPoint to use that to structure your lesson super well. It's really easy when using online platforms like this, especially when your students can't see you and you can't see them, to get caught in a vortex and then to get off track. So I really like to have a structured PowerPoint that I then convert to a PDF, because that will upload much better and I won't have any issues with picture or text placement that gets compressed in a weird way. Sue's asking me a question. Are you recording? Yes, Sue, I'm recording using a screen share function so that students later can see this from a teacher's point of view, but I can also record in BigBlueButton. So now I have it recording in two different ways. What is recording up here with the blue button is what the students see. This will be available on EduLINC in the same launch pad as the BigBlueButton session after the course is over. And I could do this for my whole call, or I could do it just for a certain section of the call. For example, if I'm teaching new content, I could just record that 5 minutes that I want students to review later. So I have two recordings going right now. One is for teachers and one is for students. I can also pause that recording if I wish to in BigBlueButton. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to try in this sample lesson is to get my students used to the platform. So I've seen my students are pretty comfortable with the chat box feature already. I can see that they're typing, they're answering my question, they're going back and forth, and I can read a little bit about average levels that these students, my teacher friends, teach. So we have LINC 5, level 4, multi-level classes at 5 and up, CLB 5 to 8, 4 and up. So we have some higher level teachers in this session, but you'll also see as we go through today that BigBlueButton and EduLINC can be used quite effectively for lower level learners, but you're just going to need the patience to go slowly with it and really take the time to teach your students each function step by step. So that's something that we're going to do a little bit right now. And I recommend doing this a little bit at a time for maybe your first 4 or 5 BigBlueButton calls with your students. Choose a few different features that they will use and practice throughout the call, so that at the beginning of your BigBlueButton use, you are not necessarily solely using the platform to learn language, but you're using the language that the students know already to learn how to use this platform. So it's a great following instructions exercise. What we're going to do first, everybody, you've already answered in the chat box, but I'd like you to look on the very left of your screen. You should see a list of names. And if you click on your name, you should see a little person icon and set status. Click on set status and then show me how you're feeling today. How are you feeling about online teaching, let's say? I am feeling super excited, so I'm clapping my hands. So is Katie Gibbs, that's great. Jennifer Burley's feeling happy. Sue's feeling happy. Will gave me a thumbs up. And I have a student that's taking a moment. That's okay. Oh, how is Anna feeling? I haven't seen that face in a little while. Undecided. Okay, well, we've got a range of emotions here. That's great. I can use this set status feature to check comprehension. I can use it for students to show me when they're ready to share what they've been working on. I can use it as a check-in feature throughout my call. Okay, students, if you click on your name again, you can click Clear Status, and that will take it back to your initials. You're allowed to have more than one emotion during a class time. In the same place, you'll also see an emotion that's just called Raise, and it's for Raise Your Hand. So if you have a question during this call, because I'm going to mute everyone's microphone, it's really important that I still know who has questions. So I can see right now, Jennifer, Anna, Sue, they all have questions. Will has a question. Katie Gibbs doesn't have any questions. That's great. Oh, it's coming. Sue put her hand down. Okay. What I can do as a teacher, if I see, oh, Jennifer has a question, Anna has a question, I can put Anna's hand down for her if I clear her status. If I know I've addressed Anna's question, I can say nope, or I might say, you might be using this feature to get your students to practice figuring out when is it appropriate to interrupt in a presentation or not for a higher level call. So they can raise their hand, and as the moderator, I can click on an individual student's name and clear their status for them. I can also do this by clicking the settings and clear all status icons up here. So if you have a question at any point during the call, I always recommend to my students, raise your hand that way. And now we've practiced. I'm also going to use my settings button to mute all users except the presenter. So Katie, Sue, and Will were already muted, but now Anna is as well. And Jennifer hasn't connected her microphone, so that didn't impact her in any way, and that's fine. This is how I can make sure my students aren't interrupting each other, and I can give them permission to turn their microphone on or off on their own. So, and I can see that Anna just unmuted herself because she has a question. That's great. So we've set our status, we've talked about how we're feeling, we've checked in a little bit, we know how to raise and lower our hands, and that might be all you get to in your first Big Blue Button call is how to use the chat box and how to ask a question or show how you're feeling. Those are some great functions, and if your students can do that after the first time, that's awesome. Where we'll head now is if your students want to share their webcam, they can do that as well. And we will talk at the end of our call about when is it a good idea to do that. But if I have two students who are interested in sharing their webcam just for a moment, you can look underneath my slide. There should be a video camera button. Right now it might have a line through it. You can click there and it will share your webcam. And we'll only do it long enough just to wave and see where those cameras are when they are shared. So if I have two students who are interested in doing that, I can see that my slide is getting smaller. Katie and Sue are sharing. Oh, Will, great, I have 3 people. That's fine. We'll stop with those 3. And it takes a moment to load. And I can see you all. Hi, everybody. Can you wave for me? That's great. And then you can hide your webcam again. Thank you so much for sharing. All right. So Will, when you're ready, you can hide your webcam. Awesome. And now my slide is back to the right size. So I can use that to check in with students, but it's probably going to be quite distracting if everyone can see everyone's face at the same time. So I usually recommend keep everybody muted until they need to speak. And unless you're really doing something where you need to see faces, keep your webcams off, especially at the beginning while people are still getting used to this platform. All right, now the fun begins. So as a moderator, you have access to these 4 buttons on the right-hand side of your screen. My students cannot see them right now, and I can use them to draw on my whiteboard. I can circle things, I can do lots of different things. As I'm teaching, I could underline something, and no matter which tool I'm using, wherever my mouse goes on the screen, I have this red dot following it. My students don't see that I have the pan or hand-shaped tool selected right now, they only see my red dot. So if I'm doing a reading activity, for example, and I would like them to read a certain word over again, we're going to be listening right now. Or if I want them to practice, go back and practice pronunciation of a certain word or read at a certain pace, I can use that. But it's always more fun if you have an interactive whiteboard. So I'm going to make this accessible to my students. I'm going to turn the multi-user whiteboard on. And now I see 2 squares here. So I know that the students have access to it. So I can see that Will's mouse and Sue's mouse are on the screen right now because their names are there. And students, what I'd like you to try, the very top button that you see on the right-hand side is shaped like a hand. Click on it and choose a pencil, and then change the color of your pencil by clicking the colored square. It might be red right now. Choose a different color and draw a shape or a circle on the whiteboard. Or a squiggle, can be anything. Great. So we're just having fun with it now, but my students are still interacting with the platform and following the instructions that I'm giving them. The funny thing about using this interactive whiteboard is that I will only be able to erase what I have written. So I'm going to choose the orange pencil, and I've made this nice big squiggle. If I click the garbage can, my orange squiggle will disappear, but my students' work won't. So students, I'm going to ask you to stop drawing, please, and then click the garbage can on your right-hand side of the screen, and you will see your drawings disappear. Thank you. All right, so we've chosen a pencil, we've changed the color. I can have students choose different colors for underlining different parts of speech, or true or false items, or even their preferences. So in the same place where the pencil is right now, it always shows up with the last tool that you used. Can you click the circle shape and draw a circle in a color that you choose around which place would you prefer to go on a vacation? Is it A, on a beach in Cuba, or B, at a cozy forest cabin on a lake? So we have different thicknesses of circles going on. We have a lot of the same colors. I could ask a particular student to answer in a certain color. We have different things going on. This is great. So this is just to show you some of the different tools that I can use to get my students to interact. And depending on your classroom management style, you might not want to have all of your students at your interactive whiteboard at once, just like you wouldn't invite all 18 of your students to come up to the smartboard at the same time. So for my students here with me today, thank you for your answers. It looks like Cuba is winning slightly at the moment. Or maybe we have a tie. But I will ask you to please click the garbage can again and remove your annotations. And they won't all disappear until everybody has clicked the garbage can. Great. So thank you for participating in that interactive whiteboard use. I'm going to turn off the permission for that now. It's in the same place as it was for me to turn it on, but now I'm the only one who can write on the whiteboard. So I still have a bit of control. Another way that I can ask a similar question in BigBlueButton is by using a poll. So instead of having students draw on the whiteboard, I can ask a question this way. In the bottom left of the moderator screen, I have an actions button, and I can start a poll. So my question, I could either have it printed on my slide or I can say it out loud. For today, I'll say it out loud. Between the two choices, A or B, where would you rather go on vacation? And I see that my students are answering. So they have A or B come up on their screen, and everyone has answered. The nice thing about this is that I can see which students answered with which answers, but they don't know who answered what. I can publish the polling results, but they still don't know who said what. So this is great for a formative assessment where you're just trying to see, are students understanding who's stuck? It could be more complex than an A or B question option, and I can show you one of those as well. But with this publish the poll results, we can talk about that, and clicking the garbage can again will remove those results. I can go back, and now I'm just back to my screen. I can start another poll. I could have more options, A, B, C, or D. So A is Cuba, B is a cabin in the woods, C is a busy city like Toronto, and D is a remote coastal chalet. So I can even give my options out loud. I should repeat them probably. Students, you can pick whichever answer you want for right now. Just make something up. And I see, okay, I still have one student who hasn't answered, thinking about it. I have 2 students who agree, different things going on, and I can publish those results as well. So this is, again, you have different polling options. I have a true or false option. And on my next page, I'll show you the custom poll option. So a custom poll is great if you're teaching any type of test taking strategy with your students where you really want them to practice multiple choice. There's 2 kinds of ways that you can do it. You could use the traditional poll where on my slide I might have A and the option for A, B and the option for B, and then choose the regular poll options where the students only have to click on the letter. Or I can click a custom poll. Now, the only trick is with a custom poll, I have to type my options in every single time. So I've opened an online notepad in a separate tab, and all I'm doing is copying and pasting my poll options in. This takes some time. The copying and pasting is definitely more accurate than trying to type quickly while you're also trying to teach, but this does take time if you're in a live call, and unless I can't really prep this in advance, excuse me. So use this feature judiciously. I have my question on the slide, and now I have my options in my custom poll settings. So I'm going to start that custom poll and see what my students have to say. I've added an other option. So if my students chose to say other, I might ask them to type that in the chat box. But again, I can still see which students are choosing which response. And this could be for something like, which part of the homework was the most difficult for you? What do you think the character in the video we watched should have done to make a better employment decision? Anything like that. And once again, I can publish those poll results. The trick with that is, with a custom poll result, it's always going to be around the same size, and I find this really small. So I might just have to remind my students, okay, 1 person voted for connectivity issues. 2 people voted for my or my students' tech abilities. 1 person voted for prep time for a new format of teaching, and 1 person voted for structuring the learning. You could also do this as a preliminary needs assessment if you're trying to figure out where your class should go next. So that's the custom poll feature. So by now we've talked through more than what you would on your regular first time with BigBlueButton with your learners, but this is hopefully introducing you to a few different features and some activity ideas for that. We've done the emotions, we've done the interactive whiteboard, and we've done polling. Let's continue and I will show you what my instructions covered today in just a moment. I have two more things. Fill in the blanks activities. This could be as complex or as simple as you would like it to be. I'm going to go back and just make sure my public chat is open. Nobody's typed any questions. We're good. So for fill in the blanks, I might ask particular students to answer. And to do that, I'm going to turn on my multi-user whiteboard, and I'm going to show my students what I want them to do first. So before you do anything, students, just watch me. The top tools button, which may look like a hand, has a text box feature. So I can draw a text box and type a word. I would like to ask Will to draw a text box to answer question number 1, and Katie to answer question number 2, please, using a text box. So now it's a little bit less chaotic. I only have 2 students using the whiteboard right now. And drawing a text box can be a little bit tricky because of the click and drag function that is required. So don't be surprised if you need to talk through that, particularly if you are working with students who are not as comfortable with the computer. All right, so I could use this as a warm-up activity. I could use this as a grammatical fill in the blank or a vocabulary fill in the blank. Lots of different options there. I can also ask students to use the tools to draw a line. So in the same place where the hand is and the pencil and the shapes, there's a line feature. And I can also change the color of my line as well. So this is great for matching questions. So Jen, could you draw a line from the end of question 1 in the matching section to where you think the answer is? Anna, could you do number 2? And Sue, number 3, please. Great. So simple activity, but just to give you the idea, I can do that matching. And then I could also, as the teacher, use a text box to fill in the correct answers. If I had a student who made a mistake, I could make sure that we're all on the same page at the end of the activity and type in the correct answers here. So depending on what your language level is that you're teaching, you might do this activity differently, but you can still get students to interact in this way using the interactive whiteboard. Thanks, students. I'm going to turn that multi-user whiteboard off, and we will keep going. So we've covered the line, the text box, drawing on the interactive whiteboard, and doing that. Those are some of the more basic uses of BigBlueButton with your students, and those are the kinds of things that you can do over and over in your first few calls. So my instructions today, we basically went through all of these things, and I just want to point out that this is too many things to introduce on your first BigBlueButton call with language learning students, because there's a lot of instructions to follow. So I would suggest just starting with the first maybe 6 about their status, raising and lowering their hand, sharing and hiding their webcam, and muting their microphone as well. Depending on how tech savvy your students are, then you can keep moving on. Okay, sharing an external video. So when I joined this BigBlueButton, I uploaded this PDF file of my PowerPoint. As a language teacher, using video is really important to me because I can use kind of that face-to-face option where students can see the speaker and also hear the speaker, but it doesn't always have to be my voice, which our learners are often saying, I understand you, teacher, but I don't understand people in the city. So for understanding and working with an external video, maybe for a listening skill using or assessment task or another type of practice, what I need to do, again, I have that online notepad open in another tab, and I'm going to copy my URL, and I go down here to Actions, the same place that I went to start a poll or to upload my presentation. I can also share an external video, and that will go over top of my PowerPoint. I'm not deleting my PowerPoint, it's just going over top. So I can play that YouTube video right within my call. My internet connectivity today may not allow me to do that, but I can see that the video is loading. Will, can you type in the chat box
Welcome. In
if
this
you
video, we're going to
see
show
the
you how to
video?
use BigBlueButton as a moderator and presenter capabilities. First thing is you'll see
I've just paused the video. Great, so he can see and hear it. So this is just as an example of showing that video. And what I might do as a teacher, I might have some questions that we read through ahead of time. We watch the video, and then I go back to that Actions button, and I can stop sharing the external video. And now I'm back to where my discussion questions are, for example. This is great no matter what language level you're teaching. If you have students who need that face-to-face component for their listening tasks, or you can find videos on YouTube that don't have that visual component, that are just an audio recording for simulating telephone calls for higher levels, for example. Be careful when you're using external video in BigBlueButton because you don't want to waste time. This is your live session time with your students, and they can always be watching videos that you post on EduLINC as well. But in the context of an assessment in particular, this is great. All right, now we're getting into some more of the advanced features of BigBlueButton. And I would only start to show these once your students are quite comfortable with the platform. So we're going to look very briefly at shared notes and breakout spaces. I'm going to go back to my notepad where I have my shared notes started. And now I'm back in my BigBlueButton area. So on the left of your screen, there's public chat, polling, your list of student names, and there's also shared notes. Students, I'll ask you to wait just a moment before you go there. I'm going to my shared notes file, and this is great because the teacher can add notes that students will edit or add to. This is great for group editing of a document or brainstorming. If I have further explanations for a concept that I'm talking about or extra links that I want to share with students, I can put them in the shared notes. Okay, for my students today, if you click on shared notes, you will see two short lists there. I'd like you to go and you can add one thing to each list. So there's levels you have taught and cities in Canada that you have visited. I can't tell who is typing what. That's another interesting thing about this shared notes feature. So it's truly a group document. Students can type and edit. Things are all going on at the same time. It's great as a brainstorming activity. And what I can do when the notes are done, I can edit them a little bit. I could make something bold or underlined. I can say, this is a good idea, but we're not going to cover it right now. I can strike through. I could make sure that students know that I'm talking about cities and not towns by bolding something. There's lots of different options. All right, thanks students. You can stop typing for now once you finish what you're writing. And when the class is done or when I'm done with my shared notes, I can export them in a different tab. I can open with Firefox. I can do different things. I could export as plain text. I can do different things and post them on EduLINC. All right, I'm just making sure my recordings are still going. Yes, they are. Excellent. So that's the shared notes feature. If you're going to use that with your students, just make sure you're giving really concrete instructions to them. I didn't want everybody posting 7 or 8 different things on my list, so I needed to make sure that everybody was only adding one thing to each list. That's shared notes. For breakout spaces, this is one of the coolest features of BigBlueButton, I think. And I'll be completely honest and say I don't have a whole lot of experience with it, but I think it's great. It's another way that students can do brainstorming or pair work. They can practice role plays. They could peer edit on something or give feedback to each other or even do a jigsaw activity and then be regrouped. So to do that, I'm going to go to Manage Users and click Create Breakout Rooms. Now, in a regular call, you might want students to work together for quite some time, but for this video, I'm only going to give my students 1 minute. I only want 2 rooms, and I could randomly assign students, or I can click and drag students into certain rooms. And I can not assign myself and wander around the tables, so to speak, and listen to students. Or if I know that group 1 is going to work really well together, or if I have a co-teacher in the room, I can put myself in another room specifically. When this happens, the recording that you are making in BigBlueButton will freeze. Not in a permanent kind of way, but it will not record what your students are doing in those separate breakout rooms, and it will resume once everyone has come back together after the duration is up. So for my students, just so you know, we're going to be breaking into 2 breakout spaces. It will look exactly like a new BigBlueButton call. It will open in a different BigBlueButton tab, but you'll only have 3 people in that room. And all I want you to do for the purpose of this video is type a greeting in the chat box. You can also have it so that your students turn on their webcams or microphones and chat and discuss and practice whatever your task is. But for this tutorial, keep your mics off, keep your webcams off. Just type a greeting in the chat box. Here we go, and I'll see you all back in 1 minute. So I have joined the breakout room, and I have my original call here, and I have put myself in a particular breakout room because I wanted to check just on a certain group of students. It's taking a minute to load. I'm going to have to redo my microphone settings. And we're back in this breakout room. I only have myself and my 2 students here. We can still see the slide. And because I'm now operating like a student, I can't manipulate that slide right now. We're just going to wait out the 1 minute, and then it'll automatically prompt us and take us back to that original classroom space. And here we are. So the breakout rooms have ended. We're back in the original conference space, and now my BigBlueButton recording will record what I've been saying. So what I said when I was in my breakout room is because I put myself in a breakout room as a student, I couldn't flip around with my PowerPoint or change what the students were seeing, but I could as a teacher, if I wanted to, kind of have the discussion questions up on the slide, have students chatting with each other, practicing pronunciation, creating a role play, lots of different options there. Okay, we're almost done for today. And there's a question or something in the public chat. Will says, my audio didn't auto-join when I was returned. Interesting.
You are now muted.
All right.
You are now unmuted.
Can everybody hear me okay? Can you just type yes or no in the chat box? I see multiple users are typing. Great. So what Will, could you hear me when you first came back in or when you had posted in the chat box there? Okay, interesting. So this is good to know. I'm still learning BigBlueButton myself, and I had to rejoin my audio as well because I went as a student. And Will had to reinitiate his audio as well, just like teachers you'll see that I did, and I had to redo that echo test and all of that. So be aware that little glitches like that can happen. And hopefully you'll have a student who is as attentive as Will was and says, hey, heads up, we can't hear you, or I couldn't hear you, and then we can go over that. Thanks, Sue, for the thumbs up. All right, we're almost done with this tutorial, and I just want to go over one last section. To webcam or not to webcam, and a sample lesson plan. So we've seen how there's been some connectivity issues either with connecting to audio, or if you have someone who lives in a rural area like I do and has slower internet, it's probably not a good idea for those people to share webcams generally. You might also have students who have privacy concerns, and I do want to point out, if you are recording using BigBlueButton for your students to watch later, that is a privacy concern. So make sure that all of your students have consented to media waivers and signed those before you do any BigBlueButton recording. Otherwise, it's an invasion of their personal privacy. When you record on BigBlueButton, your slide is visible and the chat is visible in real time as well. So even though someone might not be sharing their webcam or their microphone in a given section, they will have their name there. So that's just something to keep in mind. I do like using webcams to welcome my students as a greeting, to simulate face-to-face for speaking or listening tasks. Maybe you're doing a practice job interview for your employment unit, or you're doing a face-to-face conversation between neighbors who have to solve a problem or discuss an issue. It's also good for pronunciation instruction because then your students can actually see your mouth. Some cons, especially to having students have their webcams on all the time, it's distracting. It gets to be just like a social time where we're all too busy looking at each other's faces and saying hello than to really focus on the webcam. If you have students that are new to online learning, it's also really overstimulating and kind of confusing to have to keep track of, okay, my teacher's webcam is here and the slides are here and I need to watch the chat box. So having the simplest procedure possible and the minimal amount of overload possible, especially in early days, is really helpful. So again, it's up to you, it's up to your style, but choose when and how to share your webcam if it's going to be appropriate for the learning and for connection with students, and the same goes for them. Last thing we'll look at today, very briefly, is a sample lesson outline. If your organization has you scheduling hour-long lessons, for example, like mine does, it goes a lot more quickly than you think it will, especially if you're doing a little bit of BigBlueButton practice. So I always recommend start your call with a welcome and a warm-up. It could be like that chat box question that I had people answering. I could have a little poll for people to answer or something for them to doodle on the whiteboard. And talk about your call norms. How do you want students to show you that they are confused or that they understand something or that they have a question? How can they show you when they're ready or not ready to do something? Something I enjoy using for that is those emotions. So I could say, all right, if you're done answering the questions, give me a thumbs up. If you have a question, or you want me to re-explain something, give me a confused face or raise your hand, something like that. And your students are still following instructions when they're doing that. So we're using language in a really practical way there. The flipped model works really well for BigBlueButton or any type of online instruction. So give them something that they have to do before your class online. Use part of the class to review their homework, and then have a mini lesson, just 5 to 10 minutes of new content or deeper content. Check for comprehension of the new content, and also check for comprehension of the practice. So what are you going to have your students do with that? And ideally, this will be the bulk of your call. So it could be those breakout spaces. It could be some silent time where students need to answer a question in their notebook or write some notes down and then come back prepared to share orally. Having some silence is completely okay. It's also completely okay somewhere in the middle of your lesson to have a little break. 5-minute bathroom break, 10-minute break. That can help alleviate some of the stress of this online learning that's new for so many of us, and also give your students a chance to get a drink of water, take a breather, and come back refreshed. After your practice, review the content together, clarify any misunderstandings, and maybe ask a few more higher level, higher order thinking questions here. And then, as always, cover your assignments that they need to do before next time. What are you going to have them do to follow up from your lesson, and share any announcements that you might have about the time of their next call or anything else that they need to know about what's going on in your city or in your organization. Okay, so this has been our brief crash course into BigBlueButton. I'm sure you still have questions. I cannot recommend highly enough the resources that Learn IT to Teach has developed on using the tech side of BigBlueButton. So if you want to know more about the features that I went through today or additional features that I didn't have time to go over, their instructions are excellent and you can follow them step by step. There's also some great online tutorials available through BigBlueButton directly, and you can look those up on YouTube. That's the sample YouTube video that I was showing in the share external video. The last thing I'll show you today is how to get students to leave the classroom. So in the top right of your screen, students, you should see 3 vertical dots, and you should be able to log out or leave the meeting. Thank you so much for participating today. And where you're all my colleagues, I'm sure I'll be chatting with you very, very soon. So as the instructor, I'm going to wait until I see my students leaving. Thanks, Will. They might have some final questions that they put in their chat box. I could also end the meeting abruptly and just have everybody disconnected. I could also ask particular students to leave thanks Jen, I see your applause, if I wanted to chat with one student one-on-one.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
All right, I've heard the BigBlueButton voice saying I'm the only one here, so I'm going to end the meeting as well. And I'm going to stop this recording. Thank you so much for joining me, and all the best with your online